All right, welcome everybody. We're going to open our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. We'll take a moment of silent prayer for the victims of the shooting in Virginia. All right, thank you, everyone. We have some approval of minutes. First, we have the May 6, 2019 executive session meeting minutes.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Next item is the May 13, 2019 executive session meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. We have the motion to approve the May 20th, 2019 work session meeting minutes with Nyhart.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved, 5-0. And the motion to approve the May 20th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved, 5-0. We just received the May 20th, 2019 executive session meeting minutes, so we'll put those off till next meeting. They were on your desks today. All right, next we have our consent agenda. Are there any items that anybody would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I'd like just to pull off number 5, please.
All right, any other items? I'm going to pull item number 11. All right, so I look for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items number 5 and item number 11.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved, 5-0. Item number 5 is a motion to award the bid for stone ceiling various roads to the second lowest bidder, All States Asphalt Incorporated, at their quoted unit price of $2.44 per square yard for a one-year period, and authorizes the town manager to sign the contract after review and approval by the town solicitor.
So Mr. Chico is here.
Just let's have a motion and a second.
So moved. I'm sorry, Matt.
Second.
All right, second. Discussion. Go ahead.
Mr. DeChico is here. I'd like him to come up and just answer a couple of questions as far as timing and if there will actually be a list of roads in order of how these will be done.
Good evening. So yes, there is a list of roads already compiled for stone ceiling. We can put that very easily up on the website, on the DPW website. And also when you're usually bidding out for what happens with the timing for the bid this year, you're actually bidding a year in advance. So most of the road work will actually be done next spring. We may be able to do some this fall, but primarily it's about a season out. So next spring would be the time when all the roads that we're listing would be stone sealed.
Great. So anybody can go on the DPW website and there'll be a list of the roads of priority.
We'll get that up within the next
Perfect.
week or so.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved, 4-0. Item number 11 is a motion to allocate $10,000 to VFW Post 916 in Wakefield, Rhode Island to support its efforts on behalf of Narragansett's military veterans.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This came to us at a request from our Narragansett veterans, and we have a representative from that group here today, so I'm going to ask him to come forward. Mr. Gilchrist, please. Welcome.
Good evening, Council President Mannix, Councilwoman Lawler, Councilman Pugh, and Councilman Lima. My name is Ron Gilchrist. I'm a long-term resident of Narragansett, the town of Narragansett, and I'm here tonight representing the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 916, 916, based in Wakefield, Rhode Island. It's on High Street. It's across the street from St. Francis Church and South Kingstown Town Hall. We have been in existence there for many, many years. We've had ebbs and flows as time has gone on, peaks and valleys, but in the last several years, our post has faced a great increase, not only in membership, but in ability to service the members that we have. I'd also like to tell you that a little bit about what's going on there. We have been, for the last couple of years, involved in a construction project involving remodeling and refurbishing the post to bring it up to standards. That is progressing quite well. The downstairs social area has been almost completely remodeled, and the upstairs is going along as well. At this point, our two bathrooms, the only bathroom facilities we have are both on the lower level. Neither one of them is handicapped accessible, and we have no bathrooms on the main level. And we'd like to put in a couple of handicap accessible bathrooms up there as well. We also, because most of our veterans are aging and have difficulty getting from the social area up to the main level for meetings, we'd also like to be able to get a stair lift, because without it, being veterans, we're helping each other get up the stairs, or in many cases, just going out the back door, around to the side parking lot, up the hill, and onto the handicap ramp into the building. We service veterans from all the surrounding area. We have a number of veterans from Narragansett, South Kingstown, Kingston, Charlestown, and Richmond, and we service all of them. I'm part of the leadership team at the post, and my position there is a post service officer. But I would like to tell you that three of our members are three of our leadership team members are Narragansett residents, in addition to many other members. And one of the things that we do is we connect veterans with services and facilities and whatever it is that they need, our brothers and sisters need to manage in life, whether it's benefits, whether it's services, whether it's connections to the VA hospital, or even to Veterans Cemetery in Exeter. We do that. We try and touch a veteran every single day, and 99% of the days we're successful with helping other veterans. Part of the process that we are doing is we have opened our building to other service groups, other veteran service groups who don't have a place to meet and don't have a place for fellowship and finding out about what their services and needs may be. So we've successfully opened our building to the American Legion, also to the Vietnam Veterans of America, VVA, and also to the Washington County Veterans Council, so that they will have, currently they have no place to meet any of those groups. So we've opened our building so that they will have a place to come. They'll be able to store their records and be able to meet or just come and be with other veterans, many times, which is very important for other veterans to do. They feel most of us feel most comfortable with our brothers and sisters in service. We have been very, very blessed. I can tell you from my experience, we have been very, very blessed at the post and to have assistance, great assistance, from our Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who have come to help us out with plantings, flagpole, and also flag retirement ceremonies, which we do on a routine basis. And in fact, several Eagle Scouts have also built flag boxes for Narragansett Town Hall South Kingstown Town Hall and our building as well, so that the flags can be dropped off in an appropriate manner so that they can be retired effectively. We've also had members of the community in the trades who have also helped us out so that the dollars that we receive, we're able to steward them effectively, so that we're only buying in many cases, supplies and members of the community. We've had electrical contractors come forward. We've had the Carpenters Union Community Service Group assist us as well, and we've been blessed with some great stonemasons who have come by and saved our chimney, so chimney and fireplace as well. So that's why I'm here tonight, to thank you in advance for anything that you may assist us with, and to let you know that we are a vital part of the community. We participate, we assist with the recent parades, the Memorial Day Parade, the Veterans Day Parade, the Pearl Harbor remembrance on the bridge over the Saugatuck River, and various memorials up at the Exeter Cemetery, the Veterans Cemetery at Exeter. We also, one last thing that we do is every year just before Christmas, we take up a collection of new clothing items, socks, underwear, shirts, and we make sure that they get wrapped and delivered to our veterans who are confined to nursing homes. So we do make sure that veterans at Brightview, Scallop Shell, South Kingstown Nursing and Rehab, and several of our older veterans who are in the Bristol Veterans Home get some new clothing and remembered at Christmas time as well. So I just want to let you know that we're here. We're working every day to make sure that those who have served the country are recognized, are assisted with benefits, and we also sponsor monthly veteran service officer visits to our post and other facilities as well, so that those applications can be done in a timely fashion. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for your service. So, yeah, thank you for your service, and especially we're so close to D-Day. Thank you for the work that you do at the at VFW Post 916. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item number 12 is a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading the appropriation ordinance for the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This is a second reading, so if there's any new information that's come forward, I'm going to turn it over to the town clerk, who received, the town clerk and town solicitor who received a signature list, and can explain to us what that is.
So the town clerk did receive a signature petition pursuant to 2-1-7 of the Narragansett Code of Ordinances. She did forward that on to me and members of the council. As everyone knows, I am filling in for Town Solicitor Davis tonight, and I did pull the ordinance. I also did some research on past.
So it requests a public hearing in between the two readings of the budget ordinance, correct?
Correct, exactly. And about a year ago on October 12th, the same type of petition was requested, and Solicitor Davis gave an opinion that because there was a prior hearing on the matter, that the petition was not effective to essentially request another hearing on the matter. 2-1-9, in his opinion, and also in my opinion, is for when an ordinance is submitted without a public hearing, and between the readings of the first public hearing and the second public hearing, someone can introduce this petition to request a public hearing. It's my understanding that on the budget, there was an initial public hearing, changes in the budget, and then a second public hearing on May 6th. So it's my opinion that the petition would be ineffective to request a third public hearing. And to further that, it would make sense because because there was a public hearing, anyone could file a petition before every meeting and in order to stop the passage of an ordinance. So again, because of the fact that there was already 2 public hearings on the matter, it's our opinion that the petition is ineffective to request another public hearing on the budget.
All right, thank you very much.
I had a question for the attorney. Steve, has there ever been a situation that you know of where there's been 2 public hearings and then another request for a public hearing? Didn't that happen like 2 years ago?
The one that happened a year ago was, essentially it was for the purchase of the property at Pier Marketplace. There was
Right.
a public hearing on the matter. Prior to the second public reading of the ordinance, a petition was filed, and Mark, and actually pulled the minutes from that meeting.
Right.
Because there really hadn't been something in writing from Mark McSally or Dawson Hodgson before then. And it was based upon his opinion then. And again, I agree with that, given the reading of 2-1-9. So as far as history of interpretation of the ordinance, that was the only matter that I could find in the last few years where that petition mechanism has been requested by voters.
Right, okay.
All right, so we've had our 2 public hearings on the budget, so is there any further discussion from the council? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Whoa. You guys gonna make a statement or anything about the cutting of the funding of the library?
I have no statement to make.
Ricky?
I've already
Nothing?
stated, I think, what, should have been
This
done.
is just for the petition, right? Is this on the budget?
This is the budget. This is the second reading of the budget.
Oh, you got to that already?
This is number 12. This is the
Number
big
12.
one.
Yeah, okay. I thought we were still talking about the petition specifically. Yeah, we have I think a few things to say, right?
Yeah, I certainly got a couple things to say.
You can start if you
No,
want.
you go ahead.
All right. Cool. So I do have a few questions. Looking through the budget, I just wanted to make sure that the numbers are, I guess, accurate. Would be my question. So, Chris, if you don't mind, I just have a few questions for you. I just wanted to clear up. Thanks. I'll make it pretty quick.
Okay.
So I'm looking at page 28. So this is the town council proposed budget, so the latest version of the annual budget. On page 28, we're in the capital projects section, and there's a section for library building.
Okay, I'm almost there. Okay, we're down the, oh, yeah,
Right? So when I look at the other items in here, the sections, they're all designated to a department in town, right? So we have DPW, capital projects, Parks and Rec, and then we have this section here, which is library building. I'm curious how, so that refers to the Belmont building, correct?
correct.
All right. To have it in the budget as a library building makes it seem to me that this capital project and the expenses would be related to the library.
It's an unfunded expenditure at this point, unfunded capital project. It's all by itself, so we could keep it separated.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean a library, or it's just separate, to carry the expenses and,
So, but if you look back at this, like in a year from now, you look back at this budget, and it will be related to the library because it's called library building. So it seems like that should be labeled Belmont Building as opposed to Library Building, since it's for sale by the town. Library's not even able to access it. So I'm going to address this after, but I'm going to recommend an amendment to the budget to rename that Belmont Building, since the library has no access to it. So it doesn't really make much sense to be called something
I
that it
will
isn't.
look into that and see how that can be done.
Okay,
Well, unless, wait a minute, hang on. Unless it's sold and the library gets the funds from the sale, then we could call it the library building, I guess, right?
It's your decision.
No, not
Doesn't
my,
matter.
it's definitely not my decision.
023 is an unfunded capital project all by itself.
Understood.
And
Right, it's a
everything that
separate-
supports it shows the Belmont Building and the expenses at the Belmont Building.
You see why the other director took off.
25, 27, 29.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I'm just saying, it should be accurately labeled, in my opinion. So that's one question. And then page 35 is where we get to the library transfer and the budget for the library. So I did have a couple questions about that. I'll wait for you to get there as well.
Okay, yep.
Great. So the first thing I noticed in there is the line item for the state revenue.
Yes.
So we have $181,959. So, we've had a discussion about that funding throughout this process, and I think there's kind of 3 points of view there. One is that we would lose that funding in 2 years. Another opinion is that we're going to lose it next year. And then the opinion that I've actually heard recently, which I've heard from quite a few people that would know this, is that we're actually going to not receive that money this fiscal year coming up, because that's decided in like September or October.
December, yeah.
And this budget's going to be set before that. So the state is going to know what our budget is. So we're not going to receive that money. So I'm confused about how that's in here.
Again, there's 3 versions, and we haven't had a decision either way, so it was kept in there until a decision is made by OLIS. I guess that's once we submit the paperwork. Once the library submits the paperwork in September, that's when the decision is made, and that's what they offered for information.
All right, so then wouldn't it make more sense to not have the money in there then, since we don't know that we're getting it? Because this budget
When
is
the
based
budget
on...
was made, it was going along the lines that we had.
Yeah, that was before...
And we still don't really know if it's going to be funded or not funded 1 year, 2 years, 0 years, so.
So that 181 was in there when the original transfer was for 841, right?
Correct.
So then we knocked that down to 400, but that was never removed.
Now, again, we don't know if we're going to get it next year, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, so it was kept in with what we had, the information we had at the time, or continue to have. There has not
Right.
been a definitive answer either way, so it stays in.
So we're going to keep money in there that we don't know that we're getting.
Well, because we're under the assumption that we're going to get it this year, next year, or 2 years, we don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna, all right, I'll get back to that. So that's just money that was just left in there. Okay, so it just left.
Well, it's
And-
not just left, it was the statute, the way the statute reads is that it comes later on. It's not automatically, it's not an automatic.
That's
Right.
not decided.
But it's not automatic. That's why the budget, it remains the way it is, because it's not automatically taken out.
But it's not automatically given. So, and then I'm looking at the 517, which is the unassigned fund balance.
Yes.
So 517,983. So the number that we're working off of for the fund balance is, for that reserve is 686, right? 686,000 that the library has in reserve.
Close, I don't have it in front of me, but,
Okay.
yeah.
So then 517,000 would come out of that, which would leave like 168,000 in reserve. So we've talked about the pensions, the library pensions, and how some members of the council don't think that the library employees should get pensions because they're not a town department. And the library runs sort of autonomously on their own from the town, even though Matt said that they were a town department like a meeting or two ago. But if they run separately, if the library runs separately from the town and they make their own decisions on how they operate, has anyone from the library, and I don't know this, has anyone from the library officially stated that they will use their fund balance for their operating budget? Or is the town just putting it in there and saying that the library is going to do that? Because the town can't dictate how the library runs their operation.
We
Right.
send them an allocation, and then they
You
have
send them a
line
full
items.
allocation.
Right. And
right?
they
But
can
you
do what they
can't-
want within that. They share with us what they do. They did that Tuesday night at the work session in detail.
But it says here that the library will use the $517,000 from their reserve to fund their operation, but that's a decision for them to make. So I was wondering if anyone from the library said we agree to do that, because that's how it's in the budget here.
I would have to check back over the notes. That was
Okay,
kind of on the cusp. I can check back and look.
okay.
But I can tell you that to make the budget balance, you would have to put that in there.
Yeah,
Or
definitely.
you wouldn't have a
would
budget.
No, I know,
Right.
but I mean,
Right.
it also needs to be realistic, So we could put the numbers in to make it end up at zero, but I'm just wondering where the money's coming from.
So that's a lot shorter prediction than what was originally discussed, right? I mean, before we had 686, and now you're saying the reserve is actually 512?
No, that's what they need to cover the budget
The
that
next
they
year,
put in
for this fiscal year?
for this
Right.
1920.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Thank you. Anything else? Any other comments from the council?
Yeah, I have more comments, but that's fine, Chris. Thanks. I was wondering if someone from the library board could come up, either Patty or Lori Kelly. Just want to get a opinion from you guys on this state money, if you're willing to come up.
What's up?
So we're getting a couple different opinions on that 182,000 essentially. Have you spoken to anyone at the state or OLS about that?
Well, OLIS doesn't really want to get involved in political matters, and so they are waiting to find out what the funding is going to be. But the way the statutes were explained to us was, yes, we file in September for that money. We will not be getting that money because we are not being level funded. The town will not receive $181,000 until we go back to the 841. So lowering our budget to $400,000 doesn't make $400,000 level funding next year either. So that money will be gone. Yes, we can file a waiver in October, but the waivers have been granted, and the state has worked with other towns that are in bankruptcy. And they said very pointedly, if the town of Narragansett cut everyone's budget the same amount, then there would be a waiver potentially for us. But when they see someone who is a wealthy town being removed from the state system, it's punishing all the other state towns that are paying their fair share in a sharing system that we should not expect to be receiving state funding. And I don't know where the 2-year, 3-year thing comes out, because they were pretty clear. We apply in September for this fiscal year that started in July.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
So if the library did lose that state funding this year, which seems like it is definitely possible, possibly likely, there's a good chance that will happen, not guaranteed either way. The library is going to be left with $168,000 in reserve. But if they lose that 182, then they're down to, it's actually negative. So they'd be in a deficit of 14,000 deficit this year. So that'd be this fiscal year, which would leave, they're short, and then you really have no money for anything that comes up at all, any emergency, any repairs, any overtime, anything. So this is going to affect, I think there's a very good chance this is going to affect this year. It'll definitely affect the following year, but there's a very good chance it's going to happen this year too. I think that there's a I think there's a real possibility that we're going to see hours cut and days cut and programs cut from the library, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All in favor?
Wait, I have got a couple things.
Wait, where's there? Wait. Do you want to go? Go ahead,
You can have
Patrick.
public comment?
Go ahead.
Matt, we have public hearing at
We
10
have a
o'clock.
public hearing.
No. Matt and guys, Rick, Joe, since the state may not give us that 181, 182 in December, that's going to move the, that's going to move the discrepancy further, quicker to the library's reserve here. And I mean, doesn't that kind of, we thought it was a year out, December of next year. So this is actually, affecting the library, within the next, in December. So shouldn't we kind of recalculate the funds that we give the library to offset this, dramatic deficiency?
We went through this in the work
No, we didn't
session.
go through this.
The
This is
686.
new information.
No, it's not. The
This is new
686.
information.
The 686 plus the 400 is more than the 841 plus the 181. 686 is what's sitting in the surplus. The allocation for the town's 400. That's more than last year's 841 plus 181.
So it makes no, so next year we're going to be shy another, 350, 360? Will we be fully funding the library, that 360, to make up the difference?
That's a decision we make at budget next year.
All right, so
So that's a definite maybe.
before we call for a vote, I think I'm going to request the public comment period on this motion.
We've had a public hearing. Okay, that's fine. And we just heard from our solicitor, we had 2 public hearings on this, and we've had extensive public hearing, especially at the second one, where we heard the argument. So this is a second reading of the budget. So if there's no other conversation from the council, we've had our first reading. Is there a second? I'm going to call the vote. All in
No,
favor?
excuse
You've
me.
made your speeches. All in
Hey, Matt,
favor?
I did not-
All in favor?
Matt, stop.
All in favor?
I'm going to read a couple.
All in favor?
Wait.
All in favor?
We have
I'm calling the vote.
Hey, Matt.
All in favor?
Matt, we have town council rules.
All in favor?
Wait.
All in favor?
We have town council rules.
All-
Number 9 on the
If-
town council rules.
All in favor of
Motions on the
all in,
Hey,
all in favor?
town council rules.
We need order in the assembly. I'm going to ask people to be removed if you continue behaving like 3-year-olds.
Then let me be the first one to be removed.
Number 9 on the
All in favor?
Number 9 on town council rules.
Steve.
Motions on the agenda.
Steve,
Sean, all in favor?
Steve.
He's given his opinion. All in favor?
Hey, everyone,
Aye.
I'm gonna
All opposed?
No.
All opposed?
Hey, Matt.
All opposed?
Everybody gets a chance.
All opposed? All opposed? Are you opposed to the budget or not? All opposed?
Number 9, town
Vote all opposed
Matt,
to
excuse
the
me.
budget.
Matt, excuse me.
We heard the
We get to speak
argument.
twice. We get to speak twice. We get to speak twice on every motion, Matt. You know that. Robert's rules.
You've
So
spoken.
I'm going to speak twice.
calling the
This is
vote
second
on the
time.
motion.
This is my second time speaking. Number 9.
All
town council-
opposed. All
Matt,
opposed.
this is my second time
all
speaking.
opposed.
Can I
All
speak?
opposed. I'm calling the motion, guys.
The
I have
council
a
president.
PowerPoint presentation.
All opposed.
Mike, please put it up on
No,
the
Mike,
screen.
do not. All
Put it up on the
opposed.
screen.
All
If you
right.
Put it up
refuse
on
to
the
vote, it's a
screen.
3-0 vote on
Put
the
it up on the
budget.
screen.
I'm speaking on the
Motion
council-
approved 3-0.
No.
We're going to the public hearing.
You're a failure, Matt. Your administration is a failure.
A motion to hold a public hearing for a
Town
text
council
amendment
rules,
to
number
Narragansett
9,
zoning
motions on the
ordinance,
agenda.
adding a new
The
section
council
regulating the
president will close the
cultivation
council
and use
discussion
of
and will
marijuana for
inquire
medical
of any
purposes.
citizen-
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Is the applicant here?
This is bullshit.
Every item on the agenda.
Glad to see our state
Every item
delegates
on
are
the
here
agenda.
to speak, but there's no way to speak. This is democracy. This is democracy under Romanic's presidency, okay? It's like living next to the ocean. We take it for granted until it's lost. And it's being lost
Patrick,
again
you're out of order. We're moving
Now,
on
you're
to the
out of
next
order.
item.
This whole place
Next
is out of
item.
order. How's that?
We're moving.
Mike,
I've been waiting 20 years to say that.
Mike, before
Mr. DeLuca.
you speak, all right, I'm going to say one thing.
Call for motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
We have town council rules. Number 9 on the council rules. Motions on the agenda. These are items which the council will discuss individually in the order listed on the agenda. After the council has discussed an item on the agenda, the council president will close the council discussion and will inquire if any
We're going to take a
citizen
5-minute
wishes
break.
to be heard.
We're taking a 5-minute break.
Attention. I'd like to start out and say that I had a PowerPoint presentation giving us a little history lesson on the events surrounding the library vote, the build-out, the purchase, and the current
Patrick,
election
it's
in
an 8 o'clock.
2018.
It's an 8 o'clock public hearing.
It's
that
8:15, Matt, and we're going to have to
we're
just
gonna-
wait 1 second.
No,
'cause
we're
I'm
not.
going to make a
Mr. DeLuca,
statement.
please come forward.
I have been shut down.
You're not been shut down. This is a
yes,
public
I
hearing
have.
under the law, Patrick.
You haven't even
At
opened the
8
public.
o'clock.
You haven't
Yes, he
even
did. I
opened
just
the public
opened
hearing.
it.
Well, I'm closing
I just
it.
opened it. You can't.
I had
He's out
a
of order,
statement,
Sean. This is out of order.
and I just want to let you know that I was shut
we
down
opened the public
from
hearing.
commenting on the last
We-
issue, the agenda item 12. I was shut down publicly by Councilman Mannix by commenting on this issue. This is a very important issue to the town. I wanted to give a nice history lesson, but Matt Mannix, again, like putting open forum at the back of the meetings, dressing down constituents, talking to them sarcastically.
Come on, let's move
demeaning
on.
them.
Let's
We have
move
a
on.
public
Well,
hearing.
This is
Michael,
the
Mr. DeLuca,
democracy.
please come up.
This is not democracy.
Public
This is
hearing.
Oh, it's
a
not
shame.
democracy.
This
I
is a
know
shame.
that.
Let's
This is,
go.
I don't know
This
what
is a shame.
this is.
This is a
I
shame.
don't know what
the
this is.
97th session of the Narragansett
All right,
Town Council is a joke under your leadership.
Right.
Thank you.
Your leadership.
Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you, Council President. The agenda item you have before you is a public hearing to consider drafting and improving an ordinance to regulate the use of marijuana for medical purposes. This draft ordinance is presented by the town staff to address provisions of law approved by the General Assembly of Rhode Island in 2005 entitled the Edward O. Hawkins and Thomas C. Slater Act. This continue to refer to that as the Act. Among the many findings of that Act are the following. I'm going to read them verbatim. They're fairly quick, but it gives us perspective as to what we have put into the ordinance you'll see tonight. So these are some of the findings, not all of the findings of the Act. Modern medical research has discovered beneficial uses for marijuana in treating or alleviating pain, nausea, and other symptoms associated with certain debilitating medical conditions, as found by the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine in March 1999. Although federal law currently prohibits any use of marijuana, the laws of Alaska, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Maine, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, and Vermont, and Washington permit the medical use and cultivation of marijuana. Rhode Island joins this effort for the health and welfare of its citizens. States are not required to enforce federal law or prosecute people for engaging in activities prohibited by federal law. Therefore, compliance with this chapter does not put the state of Rhode Island in violation of federal law. Keep in mind, this is reference to the state law. 5, state law should make a distinction between the medical and non-medical use of marijuana. Hence, the purpose of this chapter is to protect patients with debilitating medical conditions and their physicians and primary caregivers from arrest and prosecution, criminal and other penalties, and property forfeiture if such patients engage in the medical use of marijuana. Lastly, the goal of the medical marijuana program is to create a system that is transparent, safe, and responsive to the needs of patients. Consequently, the medical marijuana program requires regulation and a comprehensive regulatory structure that allows for oversight over all suppliers of medical marijuana while ensuring both safety and patient access. Additionally, the Act sets the following parameters, and these are parameters we have to abide by. One is that a qualifying patient cardholder shall be allowed to possess a reasonable amount of unusable marijuana, including up to 12 seedlings that are accompanied by valid medical marijuana tags. 2, there shall be a presumption that the cardholder is engaged in the medical use of marijuana if the cardholder is A, in the possession of a registry identification card, and B, is in the possession of an amount of marijuana that does not exceed the amount permitted under this chapter. So with that as the backdrop, I would like to bring your attention to the ordinance that we have drafted. I'm working my way towards that. I'd like to point out that while the provisions that I just read to you, particularly those last two, are directive, there are many elements of the Act that are enabling. And you will recall that enabling law gives the authority to the towns to set forth regulations that are specific and detailed and in a format that is enforceable. So what we've tried to do with the regulation that you'll see tonight is that we've tried to fill in the blanks on those elements that are left to the towns for regulation. I worked with Assistant Solicitor Marcella to pull together this ordinance, and in our research, we did look into a few different sources of information. The first was case law, and the case law showed that there had been three cases related to the use of marijuana. In the earlier cases, the court found, I won't read all the cites, but the court found that medical marijuana cultivation does not constitute agricultural product manufacturing or traditional agricultural land use. The most recent case also found that the town could not limit the number of plants a patient cardholder could possess below the number allowed in the Act. This case went on further to find that revealing confidential information in order to receive local approval is an infringement that causes irreparable harm. That's the background of it all. In order to look at, for regulatory provisions, we looked at our own regulation to see if there was a way to fit marijuana, medical marijuana use in. We were unsuccessful in finding anything in the current zoning code that could be tweaked or adjusted or have a separate subsection added to it. So what we also then did is we looked at other communities. And three in particular came up on our radar: Westerly, East Greenwich, and Smithfield. In Westerly, the ordinance of Westerly defines and authorizes patient cultivation, cooperative cultivation, licensed cultivation, and includes allowances for caregiver cultivation and location regulation of compassion centers. Town of East Greenwich is a little different, a little more restrictive. They regulate several additions to within their table of uses in the code. They regulate several additions of permitted uses by zone. They prohibit non-residential cooperative cultivation and marijuana stores. They allow in certain zones by special use permit residential cooperative cultivation, personal cultivation, and the location of compassion centers. The town of Smithfield defines and authorizes patient cultivation And they put a limit of 2 plants, which was then overturned by that court case I just referred to, because the state law allows a minimum of 12. They also define and prohibit caregiver cultivation, cooperative cultivation, licensed cultivation, marijuana extraction, and location of compassion centers. So Smithfield, of the 3 that we researched, is the most regulated, most strictly regulated community. In concert with the assistant solicitor, we have drafted an ordinance that very closely patterns after the Smithfield ordinance. So I want to bring your attention, if I can get the computer to agree with me. I get my PowerPoint. Hold on. I'm sorry, I should have had this screen up earlier. This tells you basically what I just mentioned to you. So in the ordinance that we have given to you and is in your packet tonight, we have suggested that caregiver cultivation and compassion centers be prohibited, that licensed cultivation also be prohibited, along with marijuana stores, non-residential cooperative cultivation, and residential cooperative cultivation. You see by the 3rd bullet there that in discussion, the planning board altered the recommendation. While the staff had considered that licensed cultivation, which is a business, cultivation within a building under strict regulatory constraints, they recommend that be approved by the board, by the council, even though the staff was not suggesting that. What we did suggest was patient card holder and patient cultivation should be permitted as an accessory use. Now, where? Wrong one. So this is a copy of the section of the code that you know as Section 6.1, the long 11-page table of all the uses allowed in the town of Narragansett. This would be in addition to that table. None of these uses on the left-hand side currently are listed in the zoning ordinance. We would add patient cultivation, and in the residential zones, which are all the ones identified with the Rs, and the business zones, BA, BB, BC, patient cultivation would be allowed as an accessory. It's very important to keep that in mind, that it would have to be subordinate to the fact that it is someone's residential home. So it can't just take a residential home and turn it into a grow center. It has to be subordinate. And remember, patient cultivators can only grow 12 plants. You'll notice that there's an asterisk here under BA, BB, and BC. And you look in the comment line and it says that would only be allowed in mixed-use buildings as enumerated in Section D of the ordinance. Now, you recall we had a mixed-use ordinance before you not long ago that was not approved, but we do have mixed-use buildings already in place in town. They exist. They've been there for many years, some by zoning variance, some because they're just 50 or 100 years old. So we wanted to make sure that was accounted for. When you look down in the lower right, the licensed cultivation is shown as being prohibited. That's the X. But the planning board has suggested it be allowed by special use permit, so I've shown both. It is your choice to choose which approach you'd like to take. Look across the board, caregiver cultivation, residential cooperative cultivation, non-residential cooperative cultivation, all prohibited across the board, as is a compassion center and marijuana store. In their deliberations, the planning board recommended approval of the ordinance as we drafted it, with 4 caveats, and I'd like to read them to you. One is that the cultivation be done completely indoors and take up only as much space as necessary so as not to supplant the unit's primary purpose as a residential dwelling. 2, that all uses permitted under the regulation comply with all other licensing requirements of the town of Narragansett and the laws and regulations of the state of Rhode Island. 3, that the definition of marijuana store be revised to omit the words "or otherwise," to eliminate any possible misinterpretation of medical purpose of this ordinance. Now, I didn't read that definition to you. I'll pull that up quickly just so that it's on the other page. Okay, here it is. So the definition as drafted stated, marijuana store is any retail establishment at which the sale or use of marijuana as defined in Rhode Island General Law 21-28-1.02, subsection 30, medical or otherwise, takes place. This shall not include a compassion center regulated and licensed by the state of Rhode Island, as defined herein. So the term "or otherwise" is intended by the planning board to be removed so as to reinforce that medical marijuana stores are prohibited here in town and are certainly not intended to be allowed to open for the purposes of sale of recreational marijuana. It's a reinforcement of that position. The last condition the planning board suggests is that section F, let me go back to the ordinance. Section F of the ordinance, which reads licensed cultivation, and as drafted states, cultivation of marijuana by a licensed cultivator, as defined in this section, shall be prohibited in all zoning districts. The planning board suggests that that be changed to read, cultivation of marijuana by a licensed cultivator, as defined in this section, shall be allowed by special use permit in the IA and IB zones, those are industrial zoning districts, and that the table in section 6.1 be revised to place an S under those headings for Code 211 in IAIB. That is the sum and substance of my presentation. I don't believe I have anything else here. No. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
So besides the special use permit suggestion that they made, which the staff recommendation was an outright prohibition in section F, correct? What was the other discrepancy between the planning board and the staff in terms of restriction?
Just that reference to the term "or otherwise" in the definition of marijuana store.
Okay.
To eliminate the terms "or otherwise" reinforces the impossibility of having a commercial retail business that sells marijuana for recreational purposes.
All right, thank you. Before we take public testimony, any comments from the council?
Yeah, I got one comment. Do you have any samples?
I take
Yeah,
that
he
that's
doesn't want to
a
answer that one.
facetious request, and I have no answer, Mr. Murray.
I have a question, or just a comment. I want to get something verified, just for everyone kind of listening in, because the chart is a little bit complicated.
Sure.
Essentially, when you break it down, this ordinance would mimic state law, except for that one amendment. Is that right?
Keep in mind, it picks up where state law leaves off, not necessarily mimicking it. I sent you under separate cover, I sent you a lengthy, like 30-page document that is excerpts from the Hawkins and Slater Act. There's another 30 pages in that law that I didn't even give to you because it's procedural. But what we're doing is we are recognizing the 12 plant allowance of licensed card holders. And then we are saying on those elements that we are enabled to regulate, that the state doesn't dictate to us, here's what we're trying to do. And what we are trying to do, as we had drafted, was to prohibit all the other potential uses similar to the town of Smithfield. But then the planning board gave a great deal of discussion and debate. This wasn't something they did frivolously at all. Felt as though licensed cultivation could be handled in town, regulated, could be a job creator, and felt as though, and the majority felt as though they could live with that being in there. It was not a unanimous amendment, though.
Yep, anything else? All right, testimony from the public. Terry. Steve.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Terrence Fleming, from the Planning Board, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. Mr. DeLuca is correct in what the Planning Board had recommended. There was a lot of discussion, and a majority of the board felt that in an industrial zone, cultivation, indoor cultivation, these are businesses that distribute to compassion centers or in this state or other states, would be something that the council should consider by special use permit. That was 3 members of the board felt that way. 2 members of the board voted against the motion. I just also want to clarify, and if you have any questions, the or otherwise, I don't know, I want to make sure Mike and I are saying the same thing. This was an issue, while I dissented on the whole motion, this was an issue that I raised about the or otherwise. Because if you read that definition and you pass this ordinance and leave the or otherwise in, you are effectively prohibiting, in my view, the sale of recreational marijuana in a store. That isn't what was noticed, in my opinion. Everything from day one on this has been about medical marijuana. If you want to send a second motion to us, hold a second public hearing on recreational marijuana, that's fine. It's my opinion, and I think the majority of the planning board, that if you left the or otherwise in, you would be effectively banning recreational marijuana when that's never been part of the public notice. It wasn't your reference to us, it was medical. If you look in the paper, it's medical. The legal posting's about medical. I didn't feel, and neither did the other majority of the board, that you could take action on recreational without notifying the public that it was on the table. These are 2 very different things. This is just about medical. So that was my point about, and our point about the or otherwise. If you strike that and set down to the next meeting, set a public hearing on recreational and refer it to the planning board, and we'll come back with a requisite ordinance on that too. But this is just about medical. Okay? Anything else? That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. So I'm here as a advanced substance abuse prevention specialist, not wearing my
Can you
library
do your
hat.
name and address for the
Nancy
record?
DiNuccio, 8 Vanderbilt Drive, Narragansett. So I just have comments and questions on this. First of all, I think they did a great job on keeping the correct perspective on this. My one question is, can patient cultivation occur in a rental without the landlord's knowledge?
Well, if it's without the landlord's knowledge, then it would be occurring because the landlord doesn't know.
So I can't, you have to talk a little
I'm
louder.
sorry. Under state law, a landlord does have the right to deny renting a unit to someone who does cultivate marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So the landlord does have that right to do it. If obviously it's occurring without the landlord's knowledge, then frankly it would be occurring. However, that would give the landlord the right to evict someone for a breach of lease. So that was kind of a landlord protection within the State Enabling Act, not within this. So the State Enabling Act basically said landlord can not rent to someone who is, a patient cultivator because it frankly ruins the house with ventilation, et cetera. So that's the reason why there are town ordinances which require rental patient cultivators to be listed with both the fire department and the police department. We didn't feel that added a lot of additional town regulation. We felt that the marketplace with the landlords being able to essentially rent or not rent to someone was sufficient enough for each property owner to make their own decision without the additional layer of town government. But again, some towns did have it because it's frankly a fire hazard where people who don't do it right. And it's also a hazard, not so much in Narragansett, but in other towns where a lot of break-ins, house break-ins that you've seen have been people who have been growing marijuana or additional marijuana on their property. So that is allowed under state law. We didn't address it under town law because that would add another layer of approval process.
So from my standpoint, I think that approval process would be an important piece in this. I think with the amount of rentals that we have in town, that would be one more layer of protection, and to give the information to the police and fire to know where that's happening. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Richard.
Just as a thought.
Richard, just a public hearing.
I realize.
Steve, but he's sworn in.
Yep.
You got to be sworn in.
You got to be sworn in, Richard. Do you,
Yes, I realize
Tell
that.
the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir. My name is Richard Vangermersch. I'll spell it just for the fun of it. Vangermersch. There, I've done it again. Just as a thought before I start my testimony, I do request a better sound system in here. This is really intolerable that this has been going on all these years, and we have such a lousy sound system that I cannot hear. Now, part of it may be me, but it is not good that those who are here cannot really hear whoever is speaking. Hopefully you can hear me. There is a strong tide, indeed, of drugs rolling in to Rhode Island, to Narragansett, to the country, driven by tax dollars, such, in my view, poor notions of job creation to cause people death, that it's sort of difficult. This is against the tide. But I will speak against the tide on this. This weed of crime has swept our state, and hence we here in Narragansett. Society has forgotten what the hero of radio crime drama, maybe Pat Brady might remember, The Shadow, used to end his show with. The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. That is what Lamont Cranston, as The Shadow, said here. Now, obviously, I am very much against the licensed cultivation in Narragansett. This, to me, is an opening for the criminal element that unfortunately has taken over Rhode Island. And this is true also of medical marijuana. You can get anybody to prescribe anything in Rhode Island. However, for us to participate in licensed cultivation is absolutely disgusting, and all it does is increase this. Why, in our society, with opioids and all these other wonderful drugs, and I'll include alcohol in it as well, why we want to encourage, especially children, to do this is absolutely beyond my imagination. And hence, obviously, I will fight this to the last, because this is wrong. And I always bring the case of allowing liquor to be dispensed to people at 18, which was, I think, in about 1971, 72. And all that did was push drinking down to people in junior high school, and it never stopped. we may have raised the age to 21, but the culture was there. Our culture in drugs is a sick one. And why we would at any time try to encourage and license people is so far beyond my imagination, it is unfortunate. And I close with what the shadow said. The weed of crime bears bitter fruit.
Thank you. Karen and then Catherine.
State your name.
Karen Shep-Shilowitz.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but
Yes,
the
I
truth?
do. Being a registered nurse for 50 years and having had a lot of experience in pediatrics and psychiatric, I'm very concerned about any marijuana use, be it for medicinal or whatever. I'm against it. I think there are, you can get really bothered by secondary smoke, like in some of these apartments where you can smell the smoke coming in if you're asthmatic or if you have COPD. It's very scary when you can't breathe, and smoke aggravates it. And sadly, I've seen some incidences where people are high, and whether it's prescribed or not, there's misuse of marijuana, and while they're high, things can happen to children in their care or whatever. I'm totally against marijuana use. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
Just state your name for the record.
Excuse me?
State your name for the record.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. First, I want to say that these regulations do not interfere with anyone who has a legitimate medical marijuana card. There are 308 card holders in Narragansett. They will be able to continue to possess, carry, grow medical marijuana for themselves. I approve of all these restrictions and all of them. The caregiver cultivation and all that. I don't believe we can have any of that in this town. We also can't have licensed cultivation. This is very vague. The planning board is saying yes by special use permit, but there's different levels of cultivation, different licenses out there. There's micro, A, and B, and the type of license you have determines the number of plants you can grow. This conceivably, people could grow hundreds and hundreds of plants depending on the type of license they get. We really don't need this as a jobs, growth. There are plenty of large-scale cultivators out there. There's 23 in Warwick. They grow thousands of plants. We just really don't need it here. I am opposed to this. It's a fire hazard. Providence has one micro grow house, one, because they've had major fires with cultivation. And we have a small town and a small fire department, and we just don't need this. And as I'm saying, this doesn't even differentiate. Are you going to be a micro, are you going to be an A, or are you going to be licensed? This is just vague. You can have you can cultivate with a special use permit. I just don't think it's necessary at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanley.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Stan Wojciechowski in Narragansett. We should not have that. No allowance. Are we going to have a registration with a list of everybody who's doing this? There is a list out there available to everyone, to landlords, to everyone. So I want to know every patient who is growing, how much he's growing. Is he going out there and is he having it tested? Is he disturbing his neighbors? Is it smelling his neighbors? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to see any permission granted to anyone to grow marijuana in this town. And then you can bring up the landlords. How am I going to police after some tenant comes from some house or in my house and he starts growing marijuana? How am I going to police this idea? How do I police this growing issue? How do I fix it? How do I stop it? How do I prosecute it? You're going to want a landlord to go over there and jump all over this guy who's on marijuana that he can't grow? Oh, medical. Let him go out there and buy it where he has to buy it, where it's approved and looked at and quality, whatever. Let him go somewhere and buy it. Don't allow anyone to grow in this town. We are too congested in this town. Wherever they grow, it's going to affect somehow everyone around. Then we're going to be fighting. I can smell it. And then I can't tolerate the guy who's overdosing. And I can't even, is he overdosed? I don't know. And when he is, I got an apartment house, he's overdosed, now we got to burn it down. And I've been in an apartment house one time and smelled that stuff. And I don't know which one it is. So I'm going to stay there and start fixing it. Who's doing it, who's not doing it? How do I prosecute them? How do I measure? How bad is it? Like she says, it smells. Yes, it smells. I started coughing one time. I don't want to see any growing, and that indicates an approval of marijuana. The medical people can go get it at a drugstore somewhere or wherever. We don't have to grow it. We shouldn't allow it. It's just opening up a Pandora's box of a disaster here. Stop it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President,
Yes.
I just wanted to bring to your attention, we've got some complaints about the sound quality at home.
Yes.
I think when my IT person said the sound should be working fine. If everybody can just try and make sure you're speaking into the microphone and speak up, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what
You couldn't hear me? When you step up, if you could speak into the microphone and raise your voice so they can pick it up on the sound for TV. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who wants to testify? Yes.
Hello, I'm Mary Nato from 10 2nd Street, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mine is more questions than, I don't agree with the licensed cultivation, but I did have a question on what exactly 1A and 1B, what that kind of area would be. Could it be mixed use between residential and commercial?
What, when you say 1A and 1B?
The licensed cultivation, 211. So I have what was
Oh,
put
no,
in the
no, no,
paper.
that's industrial. So in other words, the
Industrial,
council put forth the ordinance where it would be banned. The recommendation of the planning board was to make it allowed by special use permit. So the I is actually industrial. There's really only two industrial zones in Narragansett. One is in the north end, one is in Waltz Way. Both, the one near in Waltz Way is close enough to a school. Under state law, it has to be, you cannot be a licensed cultivator if you're within 1,000 feet of school property. So the Waltz Way is actually 1,000 feet from the edge, not from the school building, but from school property. So it's, Narragansett really has a limited amount of industrial space. Again, the council had put forth and told me to draft an ordinance prohibiting it. However, the special use permit was recommended by the planning board, but that's I is industrial.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I am against the licensed cultivation for the industrial. Other than patient cultivation, I'm against it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name.
Adam Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. If this is for medical purposes, marijuana gets you high. The police can't tell if you took drugs, alcohol, or whatever because there's no testing for it. If you want medical, then you take the oil from hemp and you can take it. It gives you the same medical properties as marijuana does, and you don't have to smoke it, and you won't cause fires. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? So I guess the question becomes, but the special use permit issue and the IA and IB, and is there one other thing that we need to address between the?
Yeah, well, correct. So as drafted, in Industrial A and Industrial B, it was licensed cultivation was prohibited. So that the one issue is that planning board requested that it be by special use permit, and the other one was the word "or otherwise" in the medical store definition. I understand Mr. Fleming's technical objection to that. It was the definition that was included in other definitions in other jurisdictions. It's entirely up to the council. The reason why I inserted that word "or otherwise" is because compassion centers, as they are defined now and as they are used now, are morphing depending on the bill that's pending before the legislature. Currently, there's a couple of bills pending, but one essentially creates some mini compassion centers that don't have the ability to process and only to sell. I believe that they're looking for 3 to 6 more. So that's why that definition is in there, and that's why that word "or otherwise" is in there, to essentially jump on the next incarnation of what will be coming down the pike. Mr. Fleming's objection was "or otherwise" could mean recreational, which does not exist yet. In my opinion, "or otherwise" also means medical, but in a different form. That is not a true compassion center, because compassion center is a special definition, but it would still sell medical, but not in the true compassion center form that is currently in Portsmouth, Providence, and Warwick. So those are the 2 items. If you wish, that the planning board recommended amending the ordinance to, but that's entirely up to the council.
Those are their recommendations. All right, if there's no more public testimony, then I'll take a motion, but I'll just check. No one? All right, then we'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved 5-0. So now the council essentially, so the ordinance in front of us, is that the staff version or the planning board version? I guess is the first question.
Should be staff version, right, Mike? Staff version.
When we have the planning board recommendation to, so as a council, right, so what's in front of us is the more restrictive version.
Correct.
Okay, so does anybody, what are people's thoughts on this IAIB special use permit recommendation?
Take it out.
Okay, thank you. Any
Take it
other
out.
thoughts? Okay, Mr. Pugh?
I'm actually fine with it, but I'll go with the consensus on this.
All right, Mr. Lima?
Yeah, I'd like it removed, please.
Okay, so that means we would go with the staff version.
Yeah, the current
Okay.
version you have in front of us.
With the
in front
staff
of you.
version on that. So this is instruction from the council, so I'll take a motion when we're done with all this to give instruction for a first reading for the next meeting for Terry. And then we have the, at number 5, the "or otherwise" language. So we, again, we can leave that in. The planning board recommendation is to take it out. I'm going to go down and see what everyone's thoughts are on that. Would you leave in the "or otherwise" language?
I would take it out. As Terry said, we can't do anything outside of the medical sphere since it was advertised as a medical marijuana ordinance. And if it's interpreted that it would be recreational, then we're right on the line of not advertising this public hearing correctly. So I would take it out.
Either way, when the recreational legislation comes up, we'll be at 6.2 chart, so section 6.2, so either way.
All right, Ms. Lawler?
Either way, it sounds like our solicitor is saying that right now there's no recreational use in the state, so it doesn't really matter right now. And Patrick, I agree with you. if that does come, it'll be before the council at that point, so either way.
But your recommendation was you could leave the or.
Again, we're both right, and unfortunately, that's probably not a good way to advise the council. However, my thought in this was the or otherwise really, in my mind, and I don't disagree that it is vague, was anticipating non-compassion center medical marijuana retail stores, stores not recreational. However, it could be interpreted as also banning recreational. So I certainly might suggest that rather than keeping or otherwise in there, we just re-emphasize medical, whether it's with a compassion center or without a compassion center. So I wouldn't, after hearing everything, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with taking or otherwise out as it currently stands.
What if we just removed medical or otherwise? What if just removed the whole thing? So it would say any retail establishment at which the sale or use of marijuana as defined in RIGL section 21-28
and that would
102 takes place.
That would also be fine.
That might be the better way to do it. I don't know if that's, but I don't know. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
Second.
Well, but I think we don't have a motion yet.
Yeah,
This is
I know,
more fun.
Yeah, and that would read a little better too. Again, when sometimes they draft these ordinances and I draft them, it does get a little cumbersome, and that actually does read a little better. For
All right,
that
so
one.
I'll take a motion to accept the staff recommendation on the special use permit issue. So a motion to put forward a first reading of this for the next meeting with a, how did I just say that?
With the use table as recommended
With
by
the use
the
table
staff.
as recommended by the staff.
And the words
And then
medical or
removing
otherwise.
medical or otherwise from item number 5.
Correct.
All right, is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that?
Yeah, where is that wording in our packet?
It's,
Marijuana store.
it's right at the beginning, actually, so it goes after the chart, and then it's medical marijuana, and then it's section 5, so it's right, essentially the back of the first page.
Yeah, if you go after, Councilman Pugh, if you go after the chart down, it starts the definitions, section A, and then it starts at caregiver cultivation and moves. I'm looking at
As
computer,
he's looking
so
for that, we have the motion, and we had that seconded, correct?
Yes.
But the table would apply to all types of marijuana, correct?
Correct, yep.
Regardless, so if the General Assembly acted, the table of the restrictions that we've done with the co-ops, we're going to be able to restrict those uses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all those definitions were included in the medical marijuana legislation. If recreational or when recreational comes, there's going to be new definitions of what entities, corporate entities, processing entities, the legislature created. We just can't anticipate that, so we'll have to deal with that at that point.
But if it were to pass, these X's are saying you can't do recreational or medical in
Correct.
these areas.
Any of that.
Right. All right. Any other comments? All right, so with that amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. The next item is a motion to hold a public hearing on a petition from Michael Maxon doing business as Bed and Bistro Incorporated, 83 Narragansett Avenue, Plat C, Lot 344B, Narragansett, Rhode Island, to Calaveras LLC, doing business as Calaveras, 83 Narragansett Ave, Plat C, Lot 344B, Narragansett, Rhode Island.
So moved.
Second.
So motion to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. All right, is the applicant here?
Hello, I am Iliana Borisova and I'm representing Calaveras tonight, but I don't think that the applicant
Maxon, I think.
Hold on.
All right, could you
yes.
state your name and record, and for the record, and swear yourself in?
Ileana Borisova of 76 Railroad Street, South Kingston.
All right, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So, hi.
Yeah, could you spell your last name?
It's Borisova.
Okay.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
So again, I'm not sure if Maxon is here, but we are the business that are receiving the license from him. If you guys have any questions towards us.
Speak up, man.
Yeah, could you speak into the microphone? I didn't hear that. Yep.
Sorry, I'm nervous.
I know.
I'm saying that I'm not sure if Maxon is here tonight, but if you guys have any questions towards us as the receiver of the license eventually.
Right, so you're the applicant. You're seeking the transfer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess.
Yeah, they would be, they would be getting the transfer of the license. They would be, the new operator would be the proper way to.
All right, so if, is there a summary of this? Does you want to provide us with a quick summary of what is going on for the council?
Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm just going to try to help her.
All right, could you raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And just state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Julio Mendoza, and my address is 76 Railroad Street, Wakefield, South Kingston.
Could you just give a summary of the status, according to my knowledge of it, that the transfer has been requested. However, there are some additional licensing items that are still being complied with. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Just for the council, could you tell what, I'm just unaware of what the council is just unaware of how many steps you have left or what you still need to submit.
All right.
So the process have been started, but I don't believe we have letter of good standing from Maxon yet. He started the process, but there's like another couple of steps that need to be finished with the Division of Taxation, I believe.
So just briefly, in order for someone to, as you know, in order for someone to transfer a liquor license, they have to be in good standing with the Division of Taxation, along with payment in full of any past liquor bills, et cetera. So they would need those approvals before the closing could take place.
So should we continue this hearing? Is that?
Well, why don't we, if I may interject.
Unless you want to, go ahead, unless you want to break it into pieces.
Why don't we, approve it based on them getting their paperwork in order? So that way they don't have to come back.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly.
We can do that,
can approve
right?
it subject to
regulations.
Any additional state regulations that are necessary. This is just the town transfer. Terry, is it liquor or is there eviction? And they'll have to get the food license and all that. Is that correct?
Tonight is just the victualling license, because it's in conjunction with the service of beer and wine. Okay. So it's the transfer of the liquor license for beer and wine.
The short summer.
Council President, last 1 minute. If I could have Mr. DeLuca come up, because there was a break with the time period with the
liquor license.
So they got to come back to the planning board. So I could have him explain what that process looks like for them. Just give you an idea on what's in front of them, because they haven't started yet.
Yes, Mr. President, this particular location, as you know, has been the location of restaurants in the past, and the bistro, I'm forgetting it, Bed and Bistro, thank you very much, had been approved about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. It was undertaken for a while, and then it was transferred to another owner, another business, which then did not act on it, and the building sat dormant for over a year. As you recall, in the zoning ordinance, any non-conforming use that is discontinued for an excess of 365 days loses its grandfathering right. So town clerk, Ms. Donovan, and I looked that up, and we tracked that down and found that there had been a period in excess of a year with no activity on the site. So these folks are essentially starting new, And we know that it's been a site that had an inn as well as a restaurant use component in it, but the paperwork does need to just restart.
All right, thank you.
Any questions? No.
Was that between, it was Amalfi's, right? The Bed and Bistro,
Right.
right? And then when was that 1 year period?
I don't have the dates in front of me, but it was in excess of 12 months. Terry, was it about 16 months or so? We did track it.
Was it before Amalfi's? I mean, between whatever it was before and Amalfi's, or was it between Amalfi's and today?
Yes, between Amalfi and today.
Really? The guy just pulled out of there a few weeks ago. I mean,
So, question I have:
So
how long is this going to take these people? I mean, we're in a short season here. Are they going to be another 2 weeks, a month? Can
Well,
this be done this week? I mean, these people want to open the door.
That's right.
Yeah, on the zoning side, there is going to be a need for an application for special use permit.
Is there a chance we can have it be at BYOB until this is happening? Is that, I guess it's a Terry question. What's the application process for that?
It's actually that's actually a zoning question for the building official.
Okay.
I'm not sure, because it's an R10A, it's not a BB zone. So we'd have to look that up. I understand the intent and certainly the interest on the part of the council to allow these folks to get open. All I can say in regard to the special use permit is, once they provide us a full application that's complete, we will expedite it to the degree we can. You know that we have timelines and notifications and public hearings that need to be held, but we would still do our best to move it forward.
So how much time, Mike, roughly here? I mean, I'm not familiar with the whole process, so are we talking a month?
No, more than that.
Mike, can you check with the building official tomorrow to see about the BYOB, because that might help out a lot here.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So, special use permit? Yes. Okay, thank you.
But Michael, it would just, not to, I believe that the processes can run concurrently.
Yes, that's a good point, Steve. They don't need to get one process done to get the next process underway. So the liquor license can move forward. I would defer to the clerk. I'm not sure if the liquor license can officially be granted until their zoning relief is in place, but the processes can move at the same time.
Yeah, I just, that's what I would recommend, and it's just to obviously be business friendly, is to, if you choose so, to approve that subject to any seller requirements, and allow them to also pursue the special use permit on the zoning side. Therefore, everything can run concurrently, so they don't have to get the special use permit and then come back here 6 weeks from now and the summer's gone.
So we can essentially grant it because have they started the zoning board process with the special use permit? We're talking about simultaneous processes or no?
I don't believe we have a complete application as yet, but we have initiated discussions. You could, I believe, leave it to the solicitor to make the call on that you could issue it conditioned upon the receipt of the special use permit and any other relief necessary through the zoning board.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, yeah, absolutely, I agree.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to testify? Yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Rose Court.
Yeah, this is a new application. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
I'm not quite sure what's going on, to tell you the truth, at this point. That place has always been a restaurant. I don't see a problem with it continuing as a restaurant with a beer and liquor license. There hasn't been an issue. My only issue is that you've given them a rooming house license, and the fire marshal recommended that you didn't. He wanted the sprinklers fixed and I think the smoke detectors had to be fixed. So, I mean, I have no objection to them operating a restaurant, but as far as like rooming people until they fix those hardwired smoke detectors and the sprinkler system.
Excuse me, Council President, if I can interject, that matter is going to be handled later in the agenda. We're going to be talking about that, yeah.
It's a
But you already
separate.
approved the room and house license.
No, that's
No.
On the consent, didn't you? On the consent agenda.
I believe that.
Okay, all right.
No, you're correct. No, well, it was on consent.
Well, to further inform you, I did speak to the fire marshal before the start of the meeting, and he's been working with them. They've been addressing all the issues. I think by Monday, it's going to be all set. There was a mix-up with the smoke detectors and the model that they purchased. It's just a matter of them switching those back out, and they'll be in compliance. We talked about it literally 2 hours ago.
All right, before I close the public hearing, close the public hearing, what are people's thoughts on this? How do you want to go about handling the beer and wine license?
Approve it, subject to.
Right.
Everyone else feel that way?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so if there's no more testimony, all right, then I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved 5-0, and then I'll take a motion regarding the actual transfer with the contingency.
So moved.
What- So the motion will be, let's put in the language that we need. So a motion to approve the transfer, subject to the issuance of a special use permit by the zoning board. Is there can someone move that motion?
So,
Second.
All right, who moved the motion? Jill?
Jill did.
And you seconded? Okay.
Patrick.
All right, discussion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved, 5-0. Thank you. All right, item number 13 is a motion to approve the purchase of one new 2019 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD four-wheel drive pickup truck from National Auto Fleet Group in the amount of $32,616.42.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. Stanley.
Stan Wojciechowski. I've come many times on these. Do we really need a Silverado? I think I saw a chrome grille in there. Can we get a basic commercial truck and get a better deal? I know it's this fleet group and all, but I was hoping that we could get a commercial truck, not a Silverado, which is kind of to me like a Cadillac. Also, can we get a brand new zero mileage 2018? When it comes to vehicles, sometimes you get a year old with no miles on it. Same thing, get a couple, $3,000, $4,000 off, because nobody wants them. Have we investigated? Are we going to try it? Have we tried it this way? If not, can we consider that here and in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. I know that the DPW director looks at these very closely. I believe this truck is 17 years old. It is 17 years old. So any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved 5-0. Item number 14 is a motion to approve change order number 1 for the drainage pipe replacement project on 3rd Street with George Sherman Sand and Gravel Company Incorporated in the amount of $9,181 and waives the current policy to use the miscellaneous contract for this project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, this also is from the Public Works Department. Any comments from the council?
Mike, 1 second, if you could come up. So this is a project that currently was done or is being done?
The project's complete.
Right, is this an overage?
This is an overage from the existing quote, yes.
Right, and the money comes out of where?
Pavement management,
So is this part of the maintenance?
yes.
All right, so once again, I just want this on the record. This maintenance to the roads, which should have been funded $750,000 to $800,000, is funded $350,000. So it puts restrictions on the maintenance of our roads. This budget here is underfunded by $400,000 at least. So for the record, every year, this can gets kicked down the road. There are other projects out there that could be done, and they're not being done. An example is down by the pier, where Veterans Park is, in the post office. If those roads in just that little area were paved and those sidewalks were done, it's about a $350,000 project. It's been down there and it's been a disgrace for the last 15 years that I know of. But again, we don't give them the money to do the job. So I just want that to go on the record. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. I just want to say what I always say every time a change order comes before the council. You put these things out to bid, you go with the lowest person, and next thing you know, the price is more than the highest bidder. And in this case, we're going $3,000 over the $50,000 that we appropriated. You know, I don't understand. These companies have been in business a long time. I don't understand why they can't just give an amount certain and do the job for what they say they're going to do the job for. To me, it doesn't make sense, really, to give it to the lowest bidder when we always do the same thing, change order upon change order, and then the price just goes up.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 15 is a motion to read, pass, and adopt as a second reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 78 Utilities, Article 3 Sewers, Section 78-247 Definitions, and Section 78-284 Annual Permit Fees, Permit Application Fees, Annual Monitoring Fees for Commercial Industrial Users.
So moved.
Second.
This is a second reading of an ordinance proposed from the Engineering Department. Is any changes that have taken place between the two readings? No. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Item 16 is a motion to award the bid for the Community Center Building envelope improvements to the lowest bidder, Martone Service Company Incorporated, in the amount of $347,253.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Sure, I'll start. Just looking for a little bit of history on this. Was this the project that was on the agenda a few months back in the spring, or is this from a town council previous? Sean, do you know?
Steve, why don't you come up? Yeah.
Good evening. This project was in my CIP, in the department CIP, last April. It was approved on June 4th, 2018.
Okay. And for the funding, for the 347, that was already appropriated at that time?
Some of the funding was, because we carried it forward into 2019, and as we also, as you remember, I also approached the council this past budget workshop and asked to use the HVAC money from Kinney Bungalow and $80,000 for this appropriation for this year.
Okay, so the appropriation for this year is from the Kinney Bungalow back transfer.
Yes.
And then what you already had appropriated.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Steve, I had a question. How many people a day visit that building on the average?
The community center?
Yes.
Community center houses the senior center, which has programs on both floors. It varies from day to day, but we have activities like yoga, tax preparation, tai chi, bingo, knitting, watercolor classes, dance lessons, pottery classes, also have luncheons. We have a ceramics room that we're changing. They have card games, organizational meetings, meditation, different meetings, and then
Right.
on weekends and nights we host Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts,
Wednesday
and
night.
also
Yep.
board meetings.
But how many people a day on the average, year-round?
It varies.
10, 50?
Well, it's more than 10 or 50, several hundred throughout.
Per day?
Depending on each day.
Yeah, but you don't have an average?
We don't count the number of people.
All right, 'cause we're, I don't know, I just don't think there's a lot of, as much activity as the library, and we're cutting them by 400. They got 200 to 300 visitors a day. But that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you, Steve. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
Carleen Town, Wood Hill Road. First of all, I would like to say that I'm all in favor of bringing our town buildings up to code and to make them more energy efficient and leak-free. So if the senior center needs these improvements, I say go for it. I've heard Mr. Murray and others talk about a drainage problem over at that building, but I didn't see any mention of correcting that in this motion. There's no sense fixing all these things if water is just going to leak back in and cause problems. So, this project has a price tag of $347,253, unless additional built-in monies are needed for discretionary work that may be added or omitted depending on the total project cost. Let me add a few personal reflections on how the town is spending my tax dollar. When Ms. Lawler brought up a motion to have the town manager look into expanding the hours and days of operation at the senior center so she could undermine the library, I spoke up at that meeting. I had gone to the senior center that day, and I and one staff member were the only ones there. I then went to the library, only to witness that every room and table were packed with people of all ages. The so-called community center is really only a senior center, except when a group rents the space and non-seniors use it. And it is only open 5 days a week until 4:30 p.m. The library is open 7 days a week, with the exception of Sundays in the summer, and is opened until 8:30 p.m. 4 nights a week. The library caters to every age group. The library averages 10,000 people a month. I'm sure the senior center does not. My point is that you are willing to spend $347,253 on fixing the center. That's over and above its regular budget for operating costs. But you only want to give the library a total of $400,000 for its entire year's operating costs. There is something wrong with your priorities and sense of fair play that you would undermine. There is something wrong with your priorities and sense of fair play that you would undermine the library in this way. Our library is a treasure, and you should value it as much as, if not more than, the senior center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellen Koima, 109 Westmoreland Street. I actually just have two questions. Are you going to be getting any state reimbursement for this project?
Steve, are we getting any state reimbursement for the project? No.
Okay, so to offset the costs of the Narragansett taxpayers, have you done any fundraising for this project?
I said it's not a question and answer period.
I don't believe there's been any
It's for a public
fundraising done.
statement.
Do you have no, okay, so you're getting no reimbursement, and there'll be no fundraising for this project? Okay, well, it's well over $250,000 for the Narragansett taxpayers. But that's my question. So there's no state reimbursement, and there's no fundraising associated with it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Catherine.
Catherine Ciliberto, 48 Earls Court. This is an either-or situation. We need a facility for our seniors, end of story. My objection, yet again, is that I don't believe we should award this contract unless he agrees to this price that he has put here, $347,253. That's it, end of story. He's got to sign in blood, he's going to do the job for that amount of money, and no change orders that are going to add 10, 15, or more % to this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, anyone from the council?
Yeah, just one more comment. So, based on what's going on with the library, I don't necessarily agree with this motion. However, I also don't think it's right to reverse something that a previous council voted on and approved. So I will vote for this based on that those guidelines.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion approved.
Abstain.
Motion approved 4-0. I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
5 minutes. Take 5. Smoke them if you got it.
Yeah. All right, if everyone can return to their seats, please.
I guess not.
All right. Item 17 is a motion to adopt a resolution in support of House Bill 2019 H6137 that will amend the definition of commission in state law for the purposes of property tax reduction of certain historic district properties in Narragansett.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This is a discrepancy in how the state defines commission versus how we do, so it's a very narrow statute. Do you want to briefly describe it for us, please?
Yes, Mr. President, this is pretty straightforward, but it's been a long time coming. The Historic District Commission was established in 2009, and once they got underway in reviewing applications, they realized that there was, there's some legitimate concerns from people who own historic houses that some of the renovations, some of the standards and guidelines may result in increased higher cost for renovations of their properties. So the thought was that a tax credit ordinance for those renovations, exterior only, could be put into place. Your predecessors in 2016 actually passed that tax credit ordinance. And in the ordinance, it stated, among many other things, that the commission was defined as the local historic district commission, because what they would be doing is reviewing applicants' submittal paperwork, including things like receipts for work done by carpenters and others, and making certain that the expense against which the credit was going to be applied was legitimate. Unfortunately, the state law that, see if I can get this going. Okay. The state law, I'm giving you the history now, which specifies, that allows for property tax credits, specifies the commission to be the State Historic Preservation Commission. So last year, or a year before last, I was attempting to implement an application that had been submitted and realized I had to send this to the State Historic Preservation Commission, which seemed to make no sense at all. I contacted them and they said, it makes no sense at all. We do not want to look at local property tax issues. This is your own responsibility, and you got to keep it there. So we realized there was a need for state law change. So last year we submitted a bill with the assistance of Rep. McEntee to request a general change to the definition of commission that would be applied to any community that had an historic district, which I believe there are 20 at the moment. That went through Judiciary Committee of the House, and while it seemed to be well received, there was no action on the floor, and it was never voted into law. This year, I again spoke with Representative McEntee, and she advised me that if we brought it in as a single bill just for the town of Narragansett, known as a municipal bill, that it may go through quicker. Instead of going to the Judiciary Committee, it would go to the House Committee on Municipal Affairs. And so this year we wrote one up. Rep. McEntee, as well as Rep. Tanzi, co-sponsored the bill addressing the municipal bill, and this is what it is. So the text at the top of the page is the definition of commission as it reads today, and you can see that it states the Rhode Island Historical Preservation Commission, and then there's that one caveat at the end, or for the purposes of historic commercial structure property tax reduction in Warren, the local historic district commission in Warren. So that's a caveat that the town of Warren had put into place sometime in the past, specifically for their historic district regulations. And if you're familiar with this sort of thing, there are some laws on the books that have a dozen of these caveat lines, each one dictating a different community. So our suggestion is to add the red text at the bottom. For purposes of historic structure property tax reduction in Narragansett, the local historic district commission in Narragansett would apply. And so here's the resolution I've drafted. It's in draft form, and it basically states the things I just mentioned to you, including a little bit of history about our existing designated historic districts. So last Thursday, the House Committee on Municipal Affairs held their public hearing on this matter. I spoke at that hearing. I gave testimony on this. I explained to them the same dilemma I just explained to you, and how it didn't work properly or appropriately for the State Historic Preservation Commission, who don't want any part of our local taxes and tax reductions. So I believe it was well received. I would anticipate that this will move fairly quickly before the end of the session, and we can get a vote from the General Assembly. But this resolution, when they found out that we had a resolution pending, they suggested we get this resolution to them as soon as possible. This may be the key element to move this all the way through.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Teresa Tanzi, co-sponsor of the bill. I mean, precisely what you said, the fact that this is going specifically for Narragansett, it's very targeted. It'll have a much greater chance of happening, and the resolution is something that we will not pass the legislation without the authorization of the council. So I urge you to support it. Do so tonight. We have 3 weeks left of session, 3 to 4 weeks left of session, and it's plenty of time to have a municipal bill passed. So I urge your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your help. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you, Rep. Tanzi, and Rep. McEntee was here earlier. We thank her as well.
Item 18 is a motion to authorize the town manager to renew 6 adopt-a-spot agreements for 2-year terms.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, these are at Hazard Avenue, Hazard Trail, Conant, Newton, South Ferry Road, and Canonicus. Any questions or comments from the council? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Item 19 is a motion to reappoint 5 individuals to the Conservation Commission. So I'm going to start with the reappointments first. A motion to reappoint Keena King.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. A motion to reappoint Richard Thomas Nassa.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved, 5-0. Motion to reappoint Brian Grieve.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved, 5-0. Motion to reappoint John DePanny.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. And now is there a motion to appoint an individual to the vacant position?
I'd like to appoint Deborah Kopek.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just a little background. I looked through Deb's application. I know her from some other boards and organizations in town. She was involved in the Solarize Narragansett project, which she volunteered for, and that was a pretty successful project from my recollection. She has a good amount of experience with environmental and conservation organizations, and I think she'll do a great job filling the empty seat, which is left open by Stephanie Figgery, who was really instrumental in a lot of what that commission was doing. And I know Deb can, fill that spot. I know she has a lot of passion for the subject, so definitely endorse her.
All right, anyone else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No, motion fails 2-3. Is there another appointment?
Motion to appoint Patricia Federico.
Kiss of death.
Is there a second?
Kiss of death over here.
Is there a Patricia Federico. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, so I'll discuss something. So Deb Kopek is actually a strong library supporter as well, which is interesting because these board nominations rarely get rejected. The last time I remember that happening was with Gina Jarama,
Right.
which was another library supporter that you three rejected. So it's just really interesting how that happens. Any reason for rejecting Deb on that one?
We can talk about that. Do you want to talk about the other candidate?
Yeah, she has a very strong background with clean water action, Save the Bay, recycling. She seems like someone who has a lot of demonstrated experience in other in areas. I think she'd be a great candidate.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Abstain.
Motion approved 3-0. Item number 20 is a motion to reappoint 4 individuals to the Historic District Commission. So again, these are, we'll go through the reappointments first. I'm going to take a motion to reappoint Maura Hintze.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. The motion to reappoint Judy Canoyer.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. And is there a motion to appoint another individual to this commission? There were 2 applications on file, I think.
Motion to appoint Melissa Colatides as the alternate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. And Terry, is there another one?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so is there a motion for that person?
Motion to approve America Lomozali as a vacant seat.
All right, this would be
Second.
Second, all right, so this would be a full term. Terry? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion approved 5-0. Now we move on to the open forum portion, public comment portion of our meeting. Please conduct yourself in an orderly, respectful fashion, and please limit your comments to the time allotted. Thank you.
Mike.
Catherine.
Can you put that?
Oh, wait, so after Patrick, then Catherine. Go ahead.
Okay, while he's getting that up, as I tried to relate before, democracy in Narragansett, like living next to the ocean. We take it for granted till it's not there. Go out west, go to the mountains. I got to get back here. I got to be next to the ocean. And I like good democracy. They go hand in hand. The library question has been on many people's minds. Where do we begin with this saga? Next. It's the old pier. In fact, that's your picture, Rick. Just beyond Nick's, There's a police station. The next one is Moy Lee's Chinese restaurant, where my father and mother had their first date. Pretty neat. 50 years ago, they changed the dynamic of the town, previous town council. And here we are today, have an opportunity to revitalize the pier with a modern library. We can grub out the old library. I was talking to a grocery store, talking to other retail outlets who would be receptive to move into the old library. Throughout this whole process, there's been red herrings and misinformation by opposition to this project. Next, please. The bond vote. In any election, even a presidential election, only 50% of the voting public shows up. Either they're busy, they can't make it, what have you. During the bond vote, 68% of that 50% approved this bond to rehab the Belmont space for our new library. But again, a lot of misinformation. Some of the rhetoric has, the voters didn't know what they were voting for. Well, when we voted to purchase the building, 2 people showed up to complain. When we voted to sell the building in January, 4 months after we bought it, 200 people showed up. So I think the voters know exactly what they voted for. That's supposed to be the location of our new library. All projections, financial projections, were based on the Belmont space only. At no time did I ever say that the liquor store had to move out or had to locate. More misinformation. The building is substandard. We had a 60 and then a 90-day window to inspect the building. Some deficiencies were found, but could have been rectified during the build-out. It was no big deal. More misinformation. The building's in a flood zone. It's in a 500-year flood zone, meaning it has a 0.2% chance of flooding every year for 30 years. That's based on a mortgage. There's a lot of misinformation out there. This is a projected 20-year and yearly cost. All this was vetted by the finance director and Jeff Cesarine, the town engineer. These numbers were conservative, representing the worst-case scenario. And as you can see, the total cost, and we were very conservative on the donations. I mean, we only allotted for $1.2 million for donations. That should easily double. But again, it's a moot point now. But I just wanted to give you a brief history of what's going on, of what happened here. So basically, the average home, well, right now it's higher. It's closer to, $500,000. For a $408,000 home at that time, the yearly cost would have been $33 a year for the next 20 years. It represents the worst-case scenario. And again, this number would have came down if we grubbed out the old library and leased out that space. It's basically about 8 cents per thousand for that project. Next. Let's talk about the 2018 election, okay? At least 2 current sitting councilmen, councilpersons, misrepresented their support for the purchase and build-out of the Belmont space. Whether it's intentional or unintentional is up to their constituents to decide. Either way, is a clear clear case that there is voters' remorse from the 2018 election. Next. So to add insult to injury, we had a plan in place. We bought the building. The projections were solid. New council gets in under some kind of secret majority mandate. Turn around and cut the budget by 50%, placing us in a very Okay, this council cut the library budget by 50%. Let's hear another round of applause. Right. The reasoning for the cut is because they had a reserve of 686, which is now much less and closer to 500,000. Now, is it a town department or a quasi-state town entity? This has been in question. When it comes to the pensions, the town has full authority. It is a town department. When it comes to the budget and their management of their budget, I got that backwards? I got that backwards, I'm sorry. It's a town department. When it comes to pensions, they don't deserve a pension. They're not a town department. Thank you. Now, the net savings. You cut the budget, we lose state funding. Our net savings this year will be $219. That's roughly 0.35% of a $61 million budget, or about 4 cents off the current mill rate. The estimated current mill rate is going to be $10.29 for a residential home in Narragansett. Without the cut, it would be $10.33. So this is the big savings that we're getting for ripping the soul out of our library after demoralizing a population by killing the expansion project. Next. This graph clearly shows that defunding the library is going to put it in a very precarious financial position for next year. In the last meeting, and again tonight, this council has stated that they will fully fund the library next year. So why cut it this year? But it's too late. We voted on it. It's ancient history. And I don't know. I just don't get it. By cutting funds from this library, from the library trustees, this council is placing the town of Narragansett equivalent to Central Falls when they were in bankruptcy in 2011 and could not support their library. So we're purposely killing the library, cutting the budget and killing it. So what's the future look like? Next. Another council, it may look like this. Next. In the future, there's our library. One must ask, is this the future library under a continued Mannix Town Council president? Thank you.
All right, Catherine. Yeah. Catherine, wait, I know you were next, but one of the council members wants to speak.
Mike, can you go back to the picture of the pier? Because like Patrick said, I think I got that picture. So I'm sure there's people here that do remember and maybe some that don't. And this was the pier. And if you saw the original plan that Gilbane proposed on a 3-2 vote, it had all the storefronts right down that street. That's the plan he put out. In this room here, he had all the buildings, little models done out. And he showed us all the storefronts. What a beautiful. 2 archways to walk across and go to the beach. It's in the records. Should look it up so you understand what you're talking about. So when I go down there now and take a picture, where are the archways? Where are the storefronts? If you come from anywhere out of Rhode Island, you need a map to find them because they're not on the front like was originally proposed. So again, you want to do these projects with Gilbane. Yeah, Gilbane doesn't do us any favors. Mike,
What's Gilbane got to do with it? We own the lot. We own the building.
Patrick. Let him finish.
One more, Mike. Flip to the numbers. Okay. The yearly cost of $360,000. If you want to speak
Let's
out.
keep some order, people,
Yeah.
right?
I listen
Everyone
to you.
listen politely
Listen to me.
Patrick.
So $360,000 a year is what they have figured. And I can use that number. So presently, where does this town get the $360,000 when we can't even put the full $400,000 into road maintenance? Something that's been going on and on. We don't even fix the buildings or try to keep up with the ones we already own, and you want to put another one into the budget. This money would put us over the cap. So if you're asking the taxpayers, which I think you are, you're asking us to go to the state, excuse me.
No interrupting, please.
You want to interrupt, you can leave. I'm going to speak because I listen to you. Yes. Just.
Excuse me.
You want to speak out, please. The $360,000 here, okay, would put us over the cap. I can't even get the road maintenance because that would put us over the cap. So you want us to go to the state and ask them to go over the 4% cap to fund a project for the next 20 years that will handcuff the rest of the departments in this town on what they'll be able to do financially? That's what you're asking. And if you tell me no, then we all need to sit down with the town manager, the planner, the engineer, and the finance director and try to tell us how we're going to put $360 into a budget that's almost capped out. That's the answer I'd like to see. Thank you.
I'll do my public forums.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll explain that. It's actually pretty basic. We had a bond and everyone voted for it and they approved it. So that's how we pay for it. It's 8 cents per thousand. It's not even close to 4% increase. It's not even close.
But it's $360 is your yearly cost.
Yeah,
Do you
I
see
know.
that number? It's $360.
You think that's 4% of 63 million?
Equation, it takes you over the cap.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't understand that part, but it takes you over the cap.
Okay, that's 4% of 63 million, if you say so.
It's 7 cents. It's 8 cents per thousand.
You both sat through the budget. You act like you didn't go to the budget
It doesn't put you
workshop.
over the
8
cap.
cents per
The two
thousand.
of you act like
It
you didn't
doesn't
go to
put
the
you-
budget.
It's
You
8
acted
cents per
tonight.
thousand.
This acting performance is fascinating.
Matt, stop interrupting
You guys-
me in open
yeah,
forum,
right.
okay? Thanks. So, it doesn't put you over the 4% cap.
Wow.
Yeah, stop interrupting. All right, so to my point, we weren't allowed to speak during the agenda item. The public wasn't allowed to speak during the agenda item.
An open forums at the
Matt
end of the night.
Mannix broke the town council rules. It's plain and simple. Number 9 on the town council rules, motions on agenda. This was motion 12 on the agenda. These are items which the council will discuss individually in the order listed on the agenda. After the council has discussed an item on the agenda, the council president will close the council discussion and will inquire if any citizen wishes to be heard on the matter. Right? Does it say anything about a public hearing? This is for all motions on the agenda. I'll be filing a complaint with the Attorney General. Matt Mannix broke the town council rule, and he possibly violated open meetings rules as well. I actually would advise anyone in the audience to look into it as well. Everyone has the ability to file with the Attorney General. Let's talk about whether he's consistent or not. Last meeting, we had a first reading of a resolution amending parking restrictions in the South End. This was immediately after the first reading of the budget. Matt did not allow public comment on the budget reading, but he did allow public comment on the parking resolution, first reading. I'm not sure how that works. You said it's only for public hearings, right? Anyway.
There's no public hearing on the parking.
But it was a first reading.
There was no public hearing had been held.
We had a workshop, right?
We had a that's not a public hearing.
So our budgets were workshops. Those are public hearings.
No, they're not. They're workshops. Public hearings are public hearings where we have testimony. I know you have to grandstand, Jesse, I get it, but there's a difference between a workshop and a public hearing. A public hearing is where there's testimony and we have a stenographer. A workshop is where decisions, where you have a conversation about going forward, and it's not a public hearing.
Okay. So
we
that's
had two public hearings on the budget.
Yep. And does it say anywhere that you close public comment on a first or second reading? Is that in the rules anywhere?
You can have a public hearing in between the two of them if you so choose, but we had two public hearings.
It's not a public hearing. This is public comment on motions in the agenda. I don't know why it's so complicated.
So continue your comments.
I will.
Thank you.
So let's look back at precedent as well. Last year, during the budget process, we had our second reading. The council president followed the rules, Susan Cicilline-Bonanno. After the council did their public comment, Susan asked, any discussion from the public? This is on YouTube, easy to look up. It's the June 18th meeting, 2018. So there's precedent for public comment. It's in the town council rules, but Matt decides to cut it off and actually not even let Patrick speak. It's a clear violation of the town council rules, and I'll be sure to follow through and make sure the Attorney General is aware of it.
Thank you. Yes, Gloria. Oh, Catherine was next. I'm sorry. Yes.
Catherine Celebrato, 48 Earls Court. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Pugh. He moved us into the 21st century as far as tax collection is concerned. We now can have our taxes direct debited from our checking or savings. There's a form on the tax collector's website. So I'd like to thank him for that.
Thank you for that, Catherine. I just want to make a comment. I did check on that for you. However, when I spoke to Chris Spagnoli, they were already working on that. It was already in process. So I just checked on it, but they get the credit for it.
They were in process for 10 years. I've been calling that office for 10 years. Okay, whatever. I'm glad you're modest. My other comment is about the vitriol that comes from some of these people who are supporting a build-out of a library in the Belmont building. I have been called a shithead by Mal Goldenberg. Is he still here, by any chance? People have called me an a-hole, the whole word, told me to F off, and one person actually said to me, I wouldn't help you if you were dying in a ditch. Who says things like that? People that come here and then stand up and support the build-out in the Belmont building. This has reached a crescendo this weekend. I was sent Facebook posts by Albert Alba and others. These Facebook posts, they concentrated pretty much on Mr. Lima. They're blatantly false. I know Mr. Lima. I've known him for a long time. My husband worked with him. They are blatantly false and they're libelous. The posts are meant to inflame and mislead people and to set up Mr. Lima for harassment. They are statements which they are lies, and this can all be verified through public record. And people know they're lies. And when people post lies and make libelous statements, they waive their right to free speech protections. When they make statements about a person's health and they engage in rhetoric that's designed to cause a type of stress on someone which could have a detrimental effect on that person's health, they waive their free speech protections. When they make statements that are designed to cause a person to be harassed, they waive their free speech protections. Therefore, I'm asking the town council to direct the solicitor to take action against Mr. Albert and others, and I'll name them: Nancy Denuccio, Tyler Gassot, Winter Hames. The posts on Facebook are disgraceful. And I want them to take action against these people because it's the town's responsibility to protect a sitting town council member from harassment and libelous statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria.
Gloria Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. So, Mr. Lima tells us tonight that he has a vengeance against Gilbane, and that's why you don't support. You said Gilbane didn't do anything. Why should we deal with him now? Gilbane has nothing to do with this equation, but it has, in your mind, some
Please direct your comments to me, Gloria.
in this equation. Also, and I have nothing against the community center, but I want to know how much it's going to cost me as a taxpayer to spend $347,253 to do renovations at the community center, which is hardly used by anyone.
7
I don't
cents.
care.
7
Excuse
cents.
me?
7 cents per thousand.
7 cents per thousand.
Every penny is $50,000 approximately.
Thank you. And for Ms. Celiberto, talking about misinformation, you are one of the biggest.
Please direct your comments to me.
Some people, Ms. Celiberto, has the most Facebook misinformation statements on here to incite people.
But, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. You're on the site.
Thank you. Carlene.
Carleen Town, Wood Hill Road. We bought our first house here in 1973 and built our current home in 1976. Although we never had children in the public schools, we never once complained about how our tax dollars going to the schools, because we believe that a good education for all children benefits the entire community. The same holds true for our tax dollars going to the library. The library benefits the entire community. It is a place for infants to centenarians to learn, to socialize, and to have a safe harbor. So when you propose to cut the library budget by more than 50%, I find it time to complain about how my tax dollars are being spent. You didn't save me any money by cutting the budget because you just diverted that money to other departments. I value all the departments or non-departments in town and don't want to sound as though I am diminishing their significance to the well-being of all our residents. But do you know what a treasure you have in our library? As Lori Kelly pointed out, everything at the library is free, free, free. If you take a watercolor class at the senior center, you have to pay a fee. If you want to send your child to summer camp at the rec center, it costs $150 per week. Everything at the library is free, and yet you want to pull the rug out from under it. Does any other department or non-department have a director and board that write grant proposals to subsidize the budget money allocated by the council, thereby saving the taxpayer? I'm not talking about money to bring a speaker in. I'm talking about big bucks for painting the inside and outside of the building, for replacing carpeting, for upgrading the lighting, or for buying furniture. The taxpayers and you should be singing their praises for saving us so much money. Does any other department or non-department have clerks or certified personnel who take out their department's garbage every day, or who carry heavy items up and down a treacherous flight of stairs because there is not enough space on the main floor of the library? Does any other department or non-department have the volunteer component that the library has? The Friends of the Library donate thousands of hours to raise funds to supplement the budget and provide enhanced and expanded offerings to all patrons, again, for free. Many of us are in our golden years and could be pursuing our bucket lists, but we so fervently believe in the value of the library to the community that we forego some of our precious limited time left on this earth to fight to keep our library a viable institution for our precious younger generation, like our beautiful, eloquent, talented, passionate students who have spoken before you. Applaud the library and its staff. Applaud their value to the community. Applaud them for saving the taxpayers' dollars. And above all, reinstate the full budget that was requested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy LaPasta Frazier, West Bay Drive. 841 I'll give you. You get your state funding, give me 600, I'll fix your building. Richard Lima, May 20th, 2019. They get their 841, Patrick. They get their state funding. We get 600 to fix the building. We have an RFP out there. When we get that back, we'll know exactly what it is to bring that building up to, and then there was an unintelligible word. Again, Richard Lima, May 20th, 2019. If anyone thought that the issue at hand was just the existence of a library fund surplus, they're sorely mistaken. Rather, it was always about the attempts of the town council to gain control of that money. For the past month, we've been watching a drama unfold in which members of the town council have been plotting ways to get their hands on it. After all, 3 members of the town council voted to get rid of the new building and then to issue an RFP to renovate the current library. The only problem is they had no money, no way to pay for their renovations. There's no bond available or capital expenditures allocated. They needed that money desperately. So when Mr. Lima generously offered to trade $841,000 for $650,000, it was really just a move to save political careers. Let me be clear. I never wanted the library board to transfer that money to these self-appointed library czars who appear to lack basic engineering skills. Just last meeting, we watched 2 council members vote against fixing a leaking library roof. Really? What were they thinking? It's apparent that these members are ignoring all the expert advice and decision-making processes that have been going on for years and are set on implementing their own visions. No fiscally responsible person would entrust them with that $600,000. So where does that leave us? The new building is up for sale, and the current library will now be crippled as it spends down its surplus, just as Mr. Lima initially proposed. A majority of the town council approved the over $400,000 cut. Only that majority can fix this debacle. Now that the scheme has unraveled, it's time to reopen item 12 and reinstate that money without attached strings. Just do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat and Ginny. Let's see.
Yeah, the name is Patrick Brady, 156 Boston Neck Road. I have no horse in this race, other than I go to the library quite a bit, and I think they do a good job. But I hear in the paper for the last 4 months false statements made by very prominent people within the library community. And the first one I would like to state is one in an article where it states that now the library is faced with closing up to 3 days per week. I consider that a threat to me as a resident of this town. There's plenty of money that the library has, and there's plenty of money the town has. They have enough money to run this library correctly for the next year. And I do not like being threatened by the president of Love Your Library, Nancy D'Annunzio. I do not like being threatened. I have another newspaper article here. Marches protest library budget. Charlotte Natu said, people can't use the library the way it's supposed to be used. If you're in a wheelchair, you cannot get in. It's wrong. Now, that is a blatant lie. People come into that library every day in a wheelchair. We have vans showing up every day, 3 or 4 of them, with special needs people in wheelchairs that go into that library. In fact, they fill up almost every seat in the library. I'd like to know what's going on there. This is a public library. This is not a daycare center. Now, the second statement in the same article by Marianne Grinchenko said, we'll have to close down, maybe run it 3 days a week. That's a threat to me. And that's a threat made by Marianne Grinchenko, president of the Friends of the Narragansett Library. I do not like being bullied. I do not like it. And I end with an embarrassing situation here tonight. I'm embarrassed to be a resident tonight. I saw a councilman here tonight try to incite a riot. He stood up. When a vote was called, he went over to the assistant solicitor and tried to incite a riot. He threw up his papers in the air. As far as I'm concerned, Councilman Murray should be held in contempt of this council and the people of this town. And he's wearing a black band right now, and he marks himself as that black sheep. And finally, let me say, councilmen that walk out of this council chamber are an insult to this county, this community, and the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah!
Ginny Lungens, 127 Daytona Avenue. I thought I'd be speaking here this evening before the budget was passed, but I can see maybe it wouldn't have made any difference. As most of you know, the library was named in memory of my husband, Maury. Maury was on the town council for 18 years, 9 years as council president, and then he served as town manager for 10 and a half years. He was a big supporter of the library and always made sure there were funds available. I'm sure this reduction of the funds tonight would have never happened on Maury's watch. I don't know what is going to happen to the library now, and I can see that there's so many people are disappointed, as myself is, and the rest of the town residents of Narragansett who use this library all the time.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Rosalind Sinclair, 191 Boston Neck Road. Mr. Casey spoke very well for someone who's had most of a bottle of something.
Wait, address me.
Who's had a great deal to drink tonight, as I can attest, having sat next to him. So
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
What comes out of a bottle? I sat there and I could barely breathe. What comes out of a bottle is not
Sean,
always
help
the
me
best
out
thing
here.
to
This
listen
is out of control.
Excuse me.
This is out of control.
You have to speak to the council president about the subject matter.
It's subject matter in the town that's an issue.
Yes.
I mean, the library or the roads or not personal attacks on another person in the room.
Ad hominem, right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, my God. All I'm saying is what comes out of a bottle is not always to be listened to. And so far as Mr. Lima, who cannot...
You're the one, right, who put the nasty little ad in the paper?
I'm
Is that you?
Can we have some decorum here, Matt? A little decorum, please?
Yes. Thank you. our library is very important, and by doing what you've done, you've also cut off. We have several people who are ready to give a few million to the library as well, went to the new library to help whatever was necessary. So you've taken away philanthropy, you've taken away 10 years of hard work by all these people who want a library, who need a library. And there is no excuse for what you're doing to the town, to the people who voted. And as for you and calling it, and calling on the silent majority, that was a term that was coined by our eminent ex-President Nixon, if you remember, talking about a silent majority. Well, that silent majority doesn't exist. People knew. There are other college-educated people in this town. You obviously think you're the only one, but there are a lot of people who knew what they were voting for and knew how necessary and wonderful this new place would be with plenty of space. Yes, it will take building, it will take architects to help it, but we have people who stand ready for any overage to be covered, and you have thrown it away. Pay attention to what you saw up there. This man knows what he's talking about. I have nothing more to say.
If we can, wait, what just, if, remove her, remove her. Okay. Carol, go, Carol.
Carol Fortin, 10 Cross Road, Narragansett. All 5 of you, town council and members, were elected to represent all taxpayers, not just those who voted for you. I pay a good chunk of change in taxes, and you are not representing me or others in this room. And voters forced to watch at home because there are not seats at this inn. That's a shame. Mr. Lima had a while back said there was a Plan B. I haven't seen that Plan B, and you have dismantled a 10-year planning process, something that stopped, maybe even a little bit more, started in 2008. What is that Plan B? As a taxpayer, I'd really like to know what it is, and I'd like to see what that's going to cost. In regards to open meeting law, I wonder why you are using executive sessions as an excuse to keep the public body uninformed. It may not be illegal, although I do think it is, but it surely skirts on the intent of keeping us informed. Mr. Mannix, especially after tonight's, what was going on up there, I'm asking you to resign this evening. As chair, you have done nothing but anger
That's
residents.
been the goal all along of this group,
Excuse me,
Carol.
why are you you tell everybody else, talk to the chair, don't talk to me. And please address me as Mrs. Fortin, Mr. Mannix. But you've done nothing but anger the voters with your divisiveness, manipulation of executive sessions, lack of respect for your own counselors, disregard of the democratic process and will of the voters. It's really sad that you cut a budget by 50% when you have a library who was planning ahead and saved dollars to buy furniture and are now also paying a pension that you have decided not to pay. It's an abomination. I don't know what's wrong with you people. I think that a few others should resign also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mom. Name and
Patricia
address.
Mannix, 111 Colonel John Gardner Road, Narragansett. I have come to these meetings since 2012. My son was elected. I have spoken, and I come to pretty much all the meetings, less than you can count on the fingers of one hand. That's how few times I've spoken. What is going on in this town is truly appalling. And what I want to say is this. They talk about the 2016 election. They got the percentage. Well, we had an election after that in 2018. And in 2018, the Belmont 4 lost the election. You didn't get the Belmont 4. You didn't get the Belmont 3. You got the Belmont 2, which in a 5-member council is a minority. You talk about the silent majority. The silent majority voted in 2018. If everything was so honky-dory and the deal wasn't shoved down people's throats in a 3-2 vote in the 2017 year, it should have been left for the next council to decide what was going to happen. That didn't happen. The #1 vote getter in 2016, who pushed this down and had the vote, not waiting for the election, didn't get elected to the council. There's a reason for that, and the so-called silent majority, they spoke. They spoke by voting in the 2018 election, and they elected the 5 of you, 2 of whom are members of a minority, because the Belmont 4 did not win. You're talking about raising money. How much money have they raised? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lima. Did the Tiverton Town people for their library raise $3.2 million? Okay, how much have they raised? Nada, nothing. The other thing that happened in the election was Mr. Moretti, who wasn't running for re-election, and he had every right not to. Not complaining about that, you don't have to run for re-election. But he should have had the moral integrity and the decency to have abstained from that vote. It was a 1-vote difference, and he should have abstained. I'm not running for re-election, I'm abstaining. Let the people decide who they want on the council in the next election. But he didn't do that. He voted and then did not run and wasn't accountable to the people. So the real issue here is, and the incredible poisonous comments that people are making. One of the comments in the paper was that my son appointed himself council president. No, he did not. He was elected. It was a 3-0 vote. Mr. Murray abstained, and Mr. Pugh wasn't here. He was elected to the presidency. He did not appoint himself. The lies that have been spread about certain people are absolutely appalling. But what happened? Don't talk about 2016. Talk about 2018. Because if people were so excited about the library, the Belmont 4 would have won.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deal with the election result.
Thank you. Nancy and then Stan. Nancy and then Stan.
Matt, I just want to thank your mother for fixing the audio. She did a great job fixing that audio.
More derision. That's all you guys got. Derision and lies and defamation.
Now we got mathematics and
That's all you got.
We got mathematics and common sense.
It's not nice. So you voted against the budget for the library. I'll never quite understand why you've chosen to be so full of hate towards our library, the library board, the employees, and ultimately towards the patrons of the same library. As the president of the Love Your Library Coalition, proudly, I feel like I have to thank so many who tried in vain to reverse this course of action. The Friends of the Library and Love Your Library have launched a heartfelt campaign with marches and rallies and meetings, and crowds of people have supported us all along the way. We have seen bright and passionate 8th grade students speak and plead with you all for naught. We have had residents clamoring for lawn signs to signal their support for our efforts. There are buttons and bumper stickers and window clings. And thank you both to Jesse Pugh and Patrick Murray, who continue to advocate for our library. There are droves of volunteers collecting signatures on voter initiatives motivated by their support for the library. But you still cut that budget. The only town department to get a cut. You actually added to the school department's budget, even though their fund balance was $4.3 million. You want to throw good money after bad and trying to retrofit the existing library to patch it up. But it will still fail to meet the needs of our community and still require waivers from OLIS because the fund balance can't add parking among a whole list of other unmet needs. I see that you have dug your heels in and that you're not going to back down, and it's really sad for all of us. I know that the three of you did not use our great library. You are not one of the 10,000 people that enter that library during a month. So you're not going to feel that cut the way the rest of us will. The lost state funding is going to translate into many lost services, but you don't care. And just so you know, you may have won this battle, but the war's not over, and we're not going away.
Stanley.
Stan Wojcicki, Narragansett. I guess I'm not too smart. I'm kind of confused on the issue a little bit. I hear about cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget, cut the budget. But all I see is that you're utilizing the surplus funds. You're not cutting a budget. You're utilizing surplus funds to make the budget. So in the end, they still have this year, they still have the same amount of money they had last year. We're not taking money away, we're just utilizing the surplus. So why are we always hearing cut the budget, cut the budget? It's not being cut. They have the same amount of dollars for next year. I know maybe the other years will, but right now, we're not cutting the budget. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. I hear we're going to use the surplus. And I've talked about the surplus before in prior years. I hope we will look at the surplus issue, and it carries out many places. The town finance people were telling me, or I heard the finance say, we can go between 10 and 16% surplus. We should go between 10 and 16. I brought this up before, and I got to bring it again, because surplus is bothering me. She said we can go between 10 and 16%, and she suggests 12, between 12 and 13, telling me that we've got another 2% we can cut. So I want all the departments to start cutting their surplus. 2%, I think that's like 1.2 million, about that area somewhere. So I want to get to that minimum of 10%. I don't want to just have the finance gal, people in accounting, they want to be secure. So when they hear 10 to 16, wow, they don't want to go closer to 10. They can be in trouble. So they pick a number, 12. Pick a number. No, I don't want to pick that number. I want to pick the minimum to get by on, and that's 10%, saving $1.2 million. And thank God the library issue came up to bring up the issue of money and surpluses and let us carry on. I commend you for looking at the money issue, utilizing the surpluses, and look at it in all the other departments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Adam Roman, 33 Wheatfield Cove Road. You want to make a cap? Do me a favor when you go home tonight. Take out your phone bill, and you'll notice all the taxes that are on there. One is 911, and the state didn't use it for 911. They put it in the general fund. Two, there's taxes on your gasoline. I guarantee that all the taxes that are collected here in Narragansett in the summertime only will fix your roads. Number three, there's also a tax on your telephone bill for libraries. How much of that money are you getting into your budget? Probably zero, because you don't even know it's there. So there's money collected from the taxpayers besides living here. For every telephone number that's here, there's tax money that's supposed to be going for libraries, roads, and 911. Please go home and look at it and let us know at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to retire to executive session of the Town Council in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-4 and 42-46-5, subsection A.
Matt,
Wait, just 1 second. Collective bargaining, police, IBPO, Local 303 labor contract in accordance with Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5, subsection A2.
Matt, I'd like to make the motion that we actually cancel this executive session and put it on our Wednesday executive session. Cooler heads will prevail. Let's give them a chance.
Okay, so we just won't retire to it. So, all right, so make the motion, we'll reject it. Want to do that?
So make the motion to reject.
All right, is there a second? All right, since we're not retiring, we don't need a roll call vote? Okay, all right, so all in favor of postponing this executive session to Wednesday?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved 5-0.